Welcome to episode 28 of the pitboxpod. We hope you guys are feeling good. We're back again with another show. You know, we made a self-initiative. That's probably not even the right term. But we have an initiative to try and give you guys one show per month. And we're sticking to it so far. So last month, Seb came out with me to OVRP, and he actually had a chance to drive the kart. Now, also, he's driven like the regular 4-stroke rental karts, which to me, those in itself are already better than most of the indoor karts that you get at a place. Well, I don't necessarily want to call out like RPM. I have no beef with RPM. It's fine. But I'm just saying, like, racing outdoor is cooler than RPM, and like the karts are a bit faster than RPM. But then, of course, driving my kart is a whole different level compared to that. Like, the weight is significantly less. I don't even know how much the rental kart weighs, but of course my kart is like 180, 185 pounds. And then once you're in it and, you know, you have gas, and then depending on your weight, but everybody has to reach the minimum weight for the class. Yeah, at like 365 pounds, somewhere around there, I believe, the senior. Of course, stickier tires, probably like triple the horsepower. My kart makes like 30 horsepower, and the rentals have to be in the single digits. Like, if they're at 10,
that's a lot.
Yeah, that would be surprising. But still, even if it's 10, that's triple, you know?
So that's why you be cycling so much. You're trying to make weight. I knew it.
I told you that before.
This guy.
I told you that before. Like, you have to be at the weight, or you're literally giving time away.
I feel like I didn't know this, but I kind of vaguely remember you saying this. Like, it's like, I don't know.
Get to take advantage of the freebies, you know what I mean?
This man skips one of them for the track too. He maximizes everything.
Yeah, like, come on now. You gotta come correct. You
first, you're last.
Wait, what'd you say?
They said he skips breakfast too.
Nah, bro, never in my life. I could never skip breakfast or a race, man. You're gonna be hungry. You don't think so?
Bro, I hit Dunkin' Donuts on the way there. He picked me up in Jamaica, and I was like, "You want some shit?" And he's like, "Yeah, no, I'm good." I'm like, "Are you sure?"
Nah.
He's on that H2O diet.
I'm sure even Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris, all these twigs, they probably have some type of breakfast, bro. You got to eat something.
Listen,
there's no way you're racing the whole entirety of a race and not eating a damn thing. You're gonna be starving after. There's no way.
Look, just for the viewers, I'll break it down for you what I eat before a bike ride and what I eat before I go karting.
All right.
So a bike ride in the morning, the only thing I'll eat is a muffin, a banana, and like a few small turkey sausage links.
All right, see, that's good. I could get behind that because you got the carbs, you got the protein. All right, now tell me the other one.
So for karting, I mean, I might have some cereal. It could be French toast sticks, or maybe I'll make like a sausage and egg English muffin, and that will carry me most of the day. I have to eat by like 1 o'clock, like a PB&J. If I eat anything heavier, I'm just not driving. It's time to go home. But if I eat anything lighter, it doesn't really do anything.
What did he say?
He said,
what do you mean you're not driving? What do you mean you're not driving?
Night? That's what that means.
Yeah, because like if you too full, like you upset your stomach. With like the G's and the bumps, you're not gonna have a good time.
Say less. All right, hold up. I got a question then.
Yes.
So Seb, what did you eat before going karting in his cart? Tell me now, please.
On the way up, I think I had like I decided to carb load because I already know that there's no food up there in the sticks. So
okay, all right.
You know what I'm saying?
Makes sense.
So I think I had like a medium iced coffee from Dunkin' with a corn muffin and I think like 2 glazed donuts or some shit.
All right.
Damn, carb heavy.
And how did you feel when you drove that cart?
So his kart was different only because I had done like maybe 6 rounds on the CRG. Like I just kept going round after round after round. Like I was racing Gideon the whole time, who's one of the mechanics that works there, and we were just having a blast.
He's a GM. He runs the show.
Oh, he runs the show. Okay, my bad,
Oh.
Gideon. I should put some respect on you. I didn't mean that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd done beat myself up on the CRGs the whole time. So by the time I got to his kart, I was like beyond fried. Like that, I really underestimated how much that would have beat me up, and I was toast.
Did you find yourself hungry while driving though? That's the main question. I feel like that would be like, because hold on. If I feel like I'm driving the cart, right, and all of a sudden I'm on turn 11, I'm like, damn, I could really go for a fucking sandwich right now. Like that's gonna throw off my fucking race. Like, you know what I mean? I'm gonna be missing fucking apexes. I'm gonna be oversteering, like, or understeering realistically if I'm that tired and I'm hungry. So I feel like you gotta have a balanced diet to do this shit. Am I wrong? Like, I'm sorry to
Nah, I'm laughing, but you're 100% correct.
Well, look,
We might be exaggerating to a certain extent.
Like once you get out there, you're not really thinking about anything but the task at hand. But if so, like I said, I have it mapped out where I'm eating obviously pretty early in the morning before I leave the house, and then I'm good until about 1 o'clock, and then it's PB&J time, and then I'm good till about 6. I try to bring a muffin with me to eat for the ride home, because I get home at like 8 something. So I went from like 1 to 8. And I'm burning mad calories. I'm starving on the way home. But I don't always bring the muffin with me. So it's like, I'll just drink some Gatorade and I'll be all right.
And you're crazy, bro. Because you're also sweating balls while you're on that track. Like it's hot. You're already wearing like 2 layers and a race suit and rib protectors. You got a helmet on. You got your shoes on. You got everything on. And so like you're basically cooking. And the cart that you're driving too is like running pretty hot too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, basically,
Steve is like running a car, right above the empty line. You know what I mean? Just enough to get you going, and just enough so that you're not, sleepy or tired or feeling sluggish or not able to focus either. It's like that perfect balance. You know what I mean?
I'm glad you said that, because by the time I got in that cart, I did not hit that perfect balance. I was probably right above that threshold where it's fight or flight.
Right.
So I
was
just did
deciding
fight the
still. You
whole
were like, I don't know.
So I chose violence and just decided to go for it,
I'm done.
But see, but
I like your style.
but also too, like if like again, like I said, if you eat too much, you're gonna upset your stomach. But also that's extra weight. I'm already over the weight limit just naturally. So I'm trying to trim as much as possible. So if I gotta starve a little bit to get that 10th, I'm gonna be a little hungry.
All right, so let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
How serious are we taking weight in karting? Like I understand in Formula One, like that stuff is so meticulously like calculated, but like for example, for your karting, like you might be running half a tank of gas for all I know. And you understand what I'm saying? Like it's a little less like
scientific.
yeah, like it's not like to the decimal point type of thing in karting, I would assume. But I guess maybe we could ask the question, right, to compare like how karting, like how this might affect. Anyway,
I'll answer that for you.
Yeah.
So I'm probably if I was at the weight limit, I think I would probably be a 1/10 to 2/10 faster, like at the minimum weight. And that adds up, because every lap, if you were 1/10 slower after 10 laps, that's a second. They up the road. So like it does matter. It's just that I'm racing against like 15-year-olds who who
have to add weight to their cart.
Yeah, who have to add weight, and I'm an adult who's not even fat. And I'm like, I'm kind of just, I gotta work with what I have. Now, don't worry, next year I have something for them. But for this year, Yeah, I'm just overweight. And last year too, like it is what it is. Like I'm just overweight.
I'm curious. What's next year? Liposuction? Like
No, like
this guy.
I'm kidding with you, but like you know what I mean. Like, what could you possibly do?
I'm kind of tapped out on like what I can do. It's just an equipment thing now. Like,
Copy, copy,
just get a lighter
Right.
part because
copy.
yeah, like I think at most I might lose like maybe 5 pounds. I'm only like 6 or 7 pounds heavier than I was in high school. So like,
Wow.
yeah, bro, I was like 185, I think, in high school.
How much you weigh now?
I'm like 193.
All right, Seb.
That's
How much you weigh?
130.
How much did? All right, now, what were your times? I'm assuming you calculated times for like your average time, Steve, since you've driven the car multiple times. What was your time, Seb?
Do you remember what the gap was?
I think
It was like what, 4, was it 4 or 5 seconds?
it was like 4 seconds. Yeah.
You were 4 seconds faster than Steve?
No.
No, other way
no,
around.
the opposite.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
I was about to say, holy,
Well,
that's wild.
But also to like add context, he's underweight, and I'm still was forced, and I'm overweight. you know,
Barely, but yeah.
yeah, like
Gotcha.
I'm like, I think in the cart I'm like 385.
Mm.
I want to say maybe.
Which is actually that's kind of crazy because I really was not pushing hard. Like I wasn't giving it full push laps. Like I looked at the footy after like you guys took videos of me, and I would look like I was doing a Sunday drive compared to you.
Yeah. It was like-
My boy was out to cruise some week.
I
yeah,
was
like,
leaning on the radiator, just like chilling.
He was like, all right.
yeah, because like you're punching it down the straight, and then you coast through the corner, where like I'm just gunning it the entire time.
So I'm curious now. Then, Seb, getting into it, really the nitty gritty. Then, what was your feeling of your quote unquote Sunday cruise in Steve's car versus the rental cart or the standard?
It was like night and day. It was like literally stepping into a rocket ship from like
Really?
a playhouse rocket ship on the playground. It was
Sheesh.
wild.
That's kind of like, I guess that would be like the equivalent of going from F3 and jumping into an F1 car. You're 4 seconds faster, Steve, but you're overweight still. And then, you understand me? And it just feels like, the comparison, like you standing still versus rocket ship. And then it's like someone who's been doing this for a little bit and they're a whole 4 seconds faster. And could you imagine going 4 seconds faster in the drive you did, Seb? Like that's got to be like a crazy amount faster, like you know what I mean?
Right. And then just something to tag in real quick. One thing that we also got to be aware of is the fact that those 4 seconds, it's not like those 4 seconds Seb can just pick up in the straight. Like those 4
Nah.
seconds Seb has to find in each corner, which obviously requires seat time. Also, kind of like what Steve was saying, Seb wasn't even technically in weight because Steve would have had to add weight to the cart for him to be in spec. And then I really would have been curious to see like what the spread would be, because then it would be a consistent experiment between the two, because Steve might be over by like, 4 or 5 pounds, and then Seb might be right on target. And then we have two different driving experiences as well. Like Steve is a frequent, Seb is not. Then that would have been an even closer experiment just to see, where the two land, I guess.
Yeah.
And honestly, I would love to see what it would have been like had I not done so many CRG rounds, because I was straight up like beat up by the end of the day. So had I done it in like one of the first heats, like I would have pushed way harder because I just would have had way more, like I would have had
energy.
Yeah, I was way more early on in the day. Those 2 donuts and that corn muffin would have been more work at that point.
I'm done.
Oh,
The Boston cream would have been gassing. Like, oof.
The experience I'm thinking of in this is when we did those Ironman races up in Mount Kisco, where we raced for basically an hour and a half, right? Was it an hour and a half straight?
An hour. No, it was an hour.
An hour straight. Even then, it still felt very long and grueling, realistically. Like when you get out of that cart, like your hands are fucking like stuck in the
Fried.
same
Right.
position. Like I'm like this, like I got arthritis. You know
Squeezing
what I'm
the
saying?
wheel.
Like
Yep.
I could barely open my hands. And maybe that's actually a poor thing. Actually, I don't think you need to grip the wheel that tight to be able to control the car. But that's another story. I'm getting there.
Right.
Don't judge me. But it felt like a lot of work. You're sweating, you're tired, you're hungry if you didn't have the proper meal beforehand. Like, so now, and that was in a 9 horsepower car. I think it was the top tier that we could
Yeah.
drive on that circuit. So now
It
you're
was
going
mad.
up to 30. That's 21 horsepower more. That means that I'm flying. I don't even think that car could handle the track that we were at Milan Kisco.
And also, just to
Safely.
tap in, if you think about it too, since the kart makes more horsepower, that also means that you have to change your driving characteristics because
Oh
you want to try
yeah.
to keep the kart in the power band as often as possible. Steve, you wanna enlighten them real quick on what the difference is between, like in the typical CRG rental style kart, power wise, and how it comes on versus your kart.
Yeah, so like with a regular rental part, whether it's at OVRP, which is, those are gas, or indoor place where it's electric, the throttle is kind of like an on-off switch. And there isn't even necessarily a need to modulate the throttle just because of how like the carts are designed and like how the tracks are. You can kind of just stomp on it and you can do what you need to do for the most part. But with my cart, and I have a Rotax engine, so it's a little bit different if you had like a Miami, because like the two engines, even though they're both the same class and they're 125 cc's, uh, with the Miami, because of the size of the carb, you can just stomp on it. More so in a similar style to an indoor cart, they're still not exactly the same. Whereas for me with the Rotax, if you're at a slower speed, if you're coming out of the corner at a slower speed, for example, if you've driven at OVRP, the hairpin, if you just stomp on it, literally you'll just bog the engine. So it'll go, and then it'll take off. But you have to lean into it, and then it'll
Right.
take off just the way you want it to. Because also you have actual like travel with the throttle. So yeah, it's a different style of applying the throttle, especially if you're using a Rotax.
Gotcha. So I guess like coming out of the hairpin, kind of like what you were saying, if you were to floor it, it's almost like you're drowning the motor in fuel.
Yeah, you're not
Right.
gonna go anywhere. Like you literally will
Right.
just have to wait for it to,
For it to
kind of like clear itself out, and then it'll take off. But
gotcha.
out of a fast corner, so like turn one at OVRP, you could just stomp on it and it'll
Right.
keep going because you're at such a higher RPM that there's no
Exactly.
need to lean on the throttle, well, modulate the throttle, I should say, to keep going.
Gotcha. Okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, listen, guys, I've driven the CRG carts at ORVP also for a few times. Kind of like Seb has, we definitely got to get Gartrell out there so he can experience what it's like. To be honest with you, for those of you who haven't driven that OVRP, it is a super not technical, but it's very abusive track. It's extremely bumpy, so it's taxing in the sense of energy. So after like 3 laps of going hot, you start to feel it like right away. Kind of like what Steve's saying, going into turn one on how you can stay on throttle for the most part just by modulating. But as soon as you get into turn two and you make that left, you start to feel the G's that the carts pull, because obviously there's no power assist. It's the most raw experience that you can get. So that means that you're muscling through the corners. And also what I've learned too, just to briefly touch on it, what Steve was kind of mentioning and what other gentlemen who had mentioned who drive there more frequently is you can really feel when you're being smooth as far as your inputs, And it's almost like the cart rewards you even more drastically than like a car would, for example, when you hit the proper apex, or when you don't give too much of an aggressive steering input and you start to scrub off speed. Like you can actually feel those things almost on a sensory level in a cart, whereas in comparison to a car, it's like super, super numb.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I think also to help provide context, you should tell the people what your actual experiences are outside of just karting at OVRP.
What, just like driving a car? Like,
Well, I was more so going to say like, all right, we got Monticello, and then for the most part, that's about it.
yeah, I mean, I think the best way, Chris did a great job in describing it, that like it not only feels more rewarding, but like if you can really nail the like just the approach of driving a cart, it's so much more forgiving too. And like the reward really pays off, because if you don't nail it right, like it's not that forgiving. Like if you don't get
No.
that, like you're for lack of a better term, you're eating shit for the most part. So like it's that much more rewarding when you do nail it. And a perfect example of that is like turn 2 at OVRP. Like just as I was starting to get a good grasp of the just throttle sensitivity, really, I first thought like, hey, like once I pass that apex on turn 2, I can just start giving it gas, ease into the throttle, and just like let it rip, and then like coast, because at that point you're going uphill, so then you can just carry that momentum and bring it up into turn 3, since it's a long right-hander, and then you set yourself up for turn 4, which is another really long left-hander too, and so you're not even really hitting the brakes, you're just kind of carrying that momentum up there, and it starts at turn 2 really. And so in the CRGs, like you guys had mentioned, like you can just stomp it. Like the gas pedal is basically like it's binary. It's either go or don't. Steve's cart is not. It's not. So when I realized that like the hard way, like after I hit turn 2, I think like after the second lap, and I was like, okay, I can start giving it more gas. Like I'm starting to feel this cart a little bit more. And I leaned into the gas like a little bit way too hard too soon, and I didn't even realize that like I wasn't straight in my steering application, and I had just given it so much gas that the cart just like went, and I just like totally wasn't ready for it, and I just went straight into the grass and I started cutting grass.
Yeah, that's one thing too, like you were saying.
And that's the thing, like, but like once you can figure out how to attack that apex properly, and then finally like figure out how to apply the throttle in a smooth way where you're actually like carrying the momentum that you want to, and then not only just carrying that momentum, but then like figuring out where to transition the momentum in the apex and then the throttle application after the apex, and that way you can make it just super smooth. And so you're basically going into turn 2 like this, and then you're setting yourself up for turn 3, and it's just like one like beautiful sweeping motion. When you nail it perfectly, that's what it looks like, and when you don't, you look like me going straight into the grass. High risk, high reward.
Right.
So you've played the game of F1 2022, maybe some other games, Assetto Corsa, something like that. I'm curious to see to hear, I guess, your translation of how it feels to drive a kart versus how to drive in the game, and what are any of the mechanics or things you've learned in playing that game have impacted your driving on that.
That's a really good question, because like by the time, so I'd played F1 for like a couple of years now, and I have my own Fanatec rig, so like I play with no assist whatsoever. Like I play the game as raw as you can play it. And by the time I got into the 2-stroke, it was very similar to what that experience was like, especially when it came down to throttle application, because I'm not using any assist whatsoever. So if you give it too much throttle and you just flood it, like you're spinning out. Exactly. Yep. And so it was very similar to that by the time I'd gotten into Steve's kart. And so like, you know, just being mindful that like if you're going to start giving it gas, don't go full beans while you're still turning into the turn. Like you're obviously just going to spin out. You're just going to go somewhere you really don't want to go. And so because of that, like you kind of feel like that that raw control of a car that you're driving, because you really don't have any assist that you're playing around with. I mean, yeah, like in the game you have some dynamics, like you can mess with like your brake balance. You can figure out exactly like, you know, how much you want to, like, I guess, program the car to its extent that like it matches your driving ability. In a kart, they have that still to a similar extent as well, not as much, but in terms of like how it comes down to driving, it really comes down to your own like personal skill and how smooth you
Right.
can do all of your applications. And I think that's a great question, G, because it's like at the end of it all, like you really want to be smooth with your applications at the end of the day. Like even Vince at the track is just like, you don't want to be like jerking the wheel. You don't want to be doing anything that's just like too violent. Like you want to make it seem like everything is just like in tandem with each other and just be really smooth with all your inputs.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I play myself, and being as though I've driven some go-karts, but never anything as fast as Steve's. I'm trying to like gain like the perspective, so to speak, because yes, like, you know, I play the game also with like light assists at most, and in which case like you apply the throttle, you spin out, you know, put too much steering input and you're spinning out, or you're in a place where you don't want to be, or not enough, and you're overshooting the corner well over the apex, in which case you have to, you know, rein it back in, that type of thing, and you have to control your braking as well, just as in the same. And so I guess that question was more so geared to those people who may not have had the experience, but may have, you know, had some sim experience or some gaming experience, in which case like these things are modeled after, right? Like you like Formula One drivers drive in simulators in order to simulate what they do on track. So like that would be a good like maybe like comparison point for people who are watching that may not have had that experience of driving in an actual cart that's either of any type realistically. And yeah, I now I'm more intrigued to drive the car, the cart, I'm sorry, myself, because I want to see how those dynamics apply to real life in a more raw setting, and a less, like you said, customizable setting where you can, you know, adjust per your skills and how you want the car to feel and respond to certain inputs.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think one thing comes to mind too, like with what like I think it was Lewis Hamilton like a couple seasons ago. Actually, I think it was during the pandemic where they were talking about like the emphasis of sim driving in the middle of the pandemic, because the season just they didn't have that season that year.
Mm.
It like he commented that like you don't really get the feel for it in a sim scenario, that like you're not getting the G's. And
Right.
I was just like, okay, I get that, but like I'd also never driven Steve's kart at that point. I had been heavily involved in sim racing at the time, and I was like so enamored by it that I didn't even really think twice about what he meant by it. And by the time I got into Steve's kart, like the G's are what hit me. I mean, I'm not pulling 6 G's like a Formula One driver will on average on any other track, but like in terms of like how violent the track hits you with how bumpy it is and how technical it might be, and how you need to be mindful of all of that while also like having a lot more force, and like the force is coming against you, where like you may be able to think that like your applications on everything from throttle and steering and brake are going to be on point, but like you're also forgetting that like you're going against actual like gravity that's in your way, that's like precluding you from being as smooth, that
Right.
gives you confidence.
Different elevations, undulations in the pavement, you know, switching from a clean prep surface to a not so clean surface. Somebody might have went off track, so now is there dirt or sand or dust on the track? Like all those things that we so very easily look beyond actually make a huge difference when you're in the seat. And also just to briefly mention, as far as like, you know, driving on simulators and how it correlates to how, you know, racing karts is, you can probably get to about 60% of the feeling that you would in real life in the video game. I would say about 40% of the things that actually happen when you're behind the seat of one of these karts, you can't account for. And kind of like how Seb was mentioning, you know, in the computer, you can kind of adjust the settings of the vehicle to compensate for your driving abilities, versus going in the kart. It's like so eye-opening because Now it's all on you. So if you make a mistake, the kart's going to show you instantly. Look what Seb had mentioned earlier. He got on the throttle, but he wasn't pointed in the right direction. So where did he go? Off track. So, you know, positioning, pointing the kart in a certain way, making sure that you're positioned, you know, where you need to apex, and knowing when you can actually get on the throttle relative to your positioning, and then factoring in all the bumps and undulations and all that stuff. That's why it's so much more rewarding when you get right, because you're on sensory overload. Like, you're focused on pivoting, positioning yourself in this corner to lead you into the next one, because that's how, you know, you create the fastest time, is one corner at a time, and it starts with the first one. So as soon as, if you mess up the first corner, that trickles into the rest of them. So it requires so much focus and so much from your senses, that it's actually super cool to be able to then translate that either back into the game, or take it from the game to the actual kart, and just see the differences and play with the differences between both spectrums. And then even possibly, if you're lucky enough, you know, take your own car and then go on the track. So then you can really have a broadened perspective and gain from each aspect, because there's no one answer anymore to how to gain experience and how to become a more effective driver. Now it's just a cumulative effort based on all of the experiences that you can now have, whether it's virtual or karting, or, you know, racing in a club series in the vehicle, or even then graduating into the formula style racing and the IndyCar racing, if you're so committed and so lucky. So yeah, I guess that's how I would tie everything that we just spoke about together.
Couldn't have said it better.
So Seb, what was your literal first reaction once you started, like, you know, getting a rhythm?
I'll say, because like when you first get on track, you enter basically at turn 2. So like you don't really
Well, turn 3 is the first turn you see. Like,
oh yeah, it's right after turn 2, so you're basically prepped for turn 3 at that point.
Yeah.
And so like you kind of don't fully get a sense of speed at that point, because you're presented with so many turns that like you're really not going full beans yet. And so by the time you get to the first straight, and I remember Vince telling me, he's like, by the time you get to the first straight and you put your foot down, like it's gonna hit you, and you're gonna be smiling. I know we're not gonna see it through the helmet, but you're gonna be like, oh yeah, here we go. And he wasn't kidding. Like by the time I put my foot down, just because like based off the CRGs, like yeah, you hit the gas, but it's like, I mean, you're going pretty fast, but like you're not like blistering speed, like you're not really going that fast. In the CRGs, it's like you almost feel like you hit light speed in a second, and you're carrying so much speed halfway through the straight that like by the time you get to the first corner and you realize you got to hit the brakes, this is when you know you love racing, and you know that like you're kind of crazy, because you're going so fast that you know you got to hit the brakes. And any sane person would have hit the brakes like mad soon, like really early, because they're like, this is going to be really dangerous. Nah, you're like, I want to see how late I could hit these brakes.
I'm gonna go deep. I'm gonna go deep. Let's go. Let's go. High five through the camera.
And I loved it, man. It was insane, because it's like you hit that moment of like literal, like, so to answer your question, Steve, it was, and for lack of a better term, it was, oh shit. Because you realize, you take everything in, and like Chris said, like honestly, the best way to explain it is like sensory overload, because you're going so fast that like you really can't, if you're not used to it, you can't really process everything that's going on in real time. Like it's just
There's
happening.
no time to think.
No, not at all. So that's why, like in many cases, like especially with like Formula One drivers, where they're racing at the level that they are and the speed that they are, not only what they have to do has to feel reactionary, but it has to come out of a place of like habit for them. Like it has to be second nature. It has to come out of like just like pure sense. Like they can't think twice about it. So like after that experience as well, like just understanding how quickly people have to react in like high speed situations like that, like God, so much more respect. And also like that's frankly where like the addiction just like pulls into play there. Like once
For
you
sure.
feel into that speed, it's like I like this. Like I like this a
Yes.
lot.
Give me more. Give me
Right.
more until you end up in the grass real quick, and then it's like, no.
Nah, that didn't happen. Forget about that. Let's
Not
do
like
it
this.
again.
Shh, don't look, don't look, don't look.
Right. I literally turned around like no one saw that, right? All right, cool.
Right. Like, all right. Anyway, we're back in this.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if I recall correctly, you nearly were doing the same like max speed that I would be doing down the straight. Like if I'm doing like 67, I think you were doing like 65, 66. If
Damn.
I believe so. But yeah, and then it's like, like watching is like, okay, like he's mainly just punching it on the straights, coast through the corners, punch it again, coast through the corners, which, like obviously there's a lot of performance left in the kart, especially when it comes to handling. Like you didn't even necessarily explore the handling part of it, but I'm sure even at the speed you were doing, you felt how much more direct the turn-in was and how it reacts and responds compared to a regular CRG rental car.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like that's where I got a full. I mean, like I've understood it through like setting up a car, like in F122, for example, where like you play with the toe, you play with the camber, you play with the height, you play with all of the other components that you have available to you to like not just suit your racing style, but also like once you figure out how certain components of the car work, you can then design it so that it works for you. And I felt that in the kart. Like, granted, I didn't get the most out of the kart because I wasn't pushing it in the way that like to its fullest extent, but I could completely feel how like it like just the way the kart was designed was meant to go fast and was meant to do certain things at certain speeds, at certain angles, and certain deliveries where like that's just how it's done by design. And like you're really supposed to push it to that level, because if you don't, like you're really not getting the most out of that whole experience.
I try to tell people that in a car, you can drive at 7/10 and you can have fun. Like you can have a great time at 7/10. But in the kart, if you're at 7/10, it doesn't even make sense.
Nah, it's like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, because it just doesn't, like you can't get it to function the way it's supposed to if you're at 7/10. It just doesn't and won't ever make any sense. Like you just have to drive like a lunatic, a controlled lunatic, just to for it to come together. And it's like it's almost like something's loose and you pull a string and it tightens up. You're like, oh, okay, I gotta go faster. I gotta go faster. I gotta go even faster than that. And then you're like, oh, okay, now it's turning. Now I can really feel it work. All right, cool. Well, for me, especially for that day, like it didn't have brand new tires in the kart, so there was still obviously even more pace to be gained out of that day if I had fresh tires on it. I know obviously Seb wasn't fully comfortable with the brakes. The pads were a bit worn, admittedly. I had like fresh pads in my toolbox. I just didn't put them in, so I was trying to
Get me out there to die. How dare you?
My guy was trying to milk the milliseconds, baby.
I told you if you stomp on it, it will stop.
Yeah, let me stomp on a car.
He said, "Lock him up."
65 down the straight.
If you stomp on it, it will slow down.
Yeah.
If you don't stomp on it,
the last thing I want to do is stomp on it and it not slow down, and I'm going straight into the woods. Like,
well, I wouldn't do that to you. Like, I'm not going to endanger you.
No, I know.
Like, I think I was like, if the brakes like don't work, just crank the wheel all the way, and you'll probably, except for turn one, you'll probably slow down enough that you'll get through the corner.
True. Scrub it off. I was gonna ask you that also. What was the difference, Seb, in feeling between the weight differential with Steve's car versus CRG, and also like the brakes too? I know Steve didn't have fresh pads, so you couldn't experience the true difference, but still, there's a difference there because the rental karts, from what I remember, the brakes super like they're like hard. It's hard to gauge. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so like in that regard, like the brakes between the two-stroke and the CRGs, like It was very similar, but the thing that threw me off, because like the bite, it was very hard to find the bite. And that like if you're going that fast, that's kind of scary because you're like, they need to bite. Like when are
Yeah,
they gonna
for real.
bite? So like that's the part where you're just like, oh fuck. And then like when you realize that like you can nail it after a while, you're just like, oh, like okay, this is crazy, and I kind of like this craziness. But the weight difference was like massive, especially for someone like me who's on the lighter side. Like it legitimately felt like I was flying, especially like when you're going uphill through turns 3 and 4. Like most people are three-wheeling it legitimately up those turns because you're going uphill and you're also kind of like lean back a little bit, but then like, you know, when you're racing, you're on the edge, like you're literally on the edge of the car's performance of a car's performance. So like once you find that edge and you know how to ride that edge, that's how you're getting peak performance. And I could tell like, okay, like I got a lot more respect for, I mean, not just for you, Steve, but like everyone else that I'm seeing on track that's like seriously pushing it to that edge and with such confidence that they know like, okay, I know where the edge is here. I need to ride that. And I know exactly what I need to do to like, you know, connect all these turns so that I can make the most out of my time and then punch the brakes at this corner and then like ease it off the throttle once I'm off past the apex. And so like for someone like myself who was underweight and even like just like, I mean, comparatively to I guess the standards of like what I should weigh with the cart altogether, it felt like I was flying. Like it was insane. Especially
awesome.
down the straight. Like it wasn't that windy that day, but if there was like a solid gust of wind, like you feel that for sure.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah, it was sick.
Yeah, I mean, with like the brakes on this specific chassis, like the way they're set up, there isn't any real significant pedal travel. So like there is some travel, but you feel it once you're really into the brake because you really got to stomp on it, and then of course like your threshold braking, so you're letting off almost because you don't want to lock the brake up. You know, so like you start to feel it, and then like I don't know, like it's also a bit challenging too because your weight comes forward, but then I'm tall, so I'm really trying to lift my leg off the pedal.
Right.
So
It's almost like you're going in two different directions.
Yeah, so I'm not over slowing, you know. And then like there's other things too that it wouldn't have mattered to tell you because like it was your first time driving it and getting a feel. But one thing people do to try and smoothen out your inputs is like you push on the wheel instead of pulling on it, because if you pull on it, like it's easier to yank. And then as soon as you do that, you just shave a whole bunch of speed out the cart.
Yeah, the weird part about that is that mentality is so foreign to somebody who hasn't driven that cart or driven that fast. Like,
yeah,
like if you're trying to tell me to slow down and I got to turn, I'm like, what are the brakes for?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's 3 ways to slow the cart down: hit the brakes, let off the gas, or turn the wheel. You know, like I've literally not last month. I don't think it was last month. Probably like 2 months ago. Like I was coming into the hairpin and the brakes didn't work. And it was just because I hadn't like flushed the fluid this year. I did after that. But you know, after you nearly piss yourself, yeah, you'll go back and flush that fluid. I didn't hit anything despite like it being a super tight turn. So like literally I just let off and just cranked the wheel all the way. And it's like it turned, and then it didn't turn all the way. Like it
right. You understeered until the caught.
Yeah, it understeered enough and quickly enough that like I didn't hit anything. And then
lucky.
Yeah,
that would have hurt.
Oh yeah, the damn sure would have as much stuff as I've hit. Like yeah, that would have hurt.
For real.
But it's like once you know stuff like that too, it helps because you're like, oh, like if this happens, then I know to just do this. Or like turn 1, it's like, all right, like I've come into the turn 1 so hot, like so many times. It's just like, oh, all right, 4-wheel slide, let it slow down. All right, we got 4 wheels and outside apex. All right, we're good. Let's let's keep going. You
Back
know,
into it.
Like turn 2, bro. I've driven off the track at turn 2 so many times.
That's your favorite turn.
I think maybe turn one is my favorite, but it's like turn two, because turn two is banked, and it's like you got to hit the apex, but then I almost feel like the cart slides out on the corner.
Right.
And I swear, like sometimes I have like half the tire left on the apex, and like I had to start running the sprocket guard because I had bent like multiple sprockets coming off that curve, and I'm like, oh, not again. So like, you know, I had to put the sprocket guard on, and yeah, you just start to get comfortable with like, all right, yeah, I'm a bit out of control, but there's no need to panic. Like I'm still on top of this. So
it adds into your confidence.
yeah, like, oh, I went and mowed some lawn. I could be a landscaper some days, all the
John Deere, baby, John Deere.
yeah, like whatever, you know, just keep moving, you know. But you obviously, like, I don't want you like crashing and mowing lawn in my cart because I only have one. Like,
right.
It's
not like we're trying to do this.
Yeah, but like, you know, you start to get comfortable and you're like, oh, all right, whatever, I'm sliding, like brakes don't work, whatever. Like, you know, keep
carry on.
Yeah, like I'll fix that. Keep it moving. Yeah.
Right.
So of course, like, yes, if you know you drove it earlier in the day, you would have felt fresher and you probably would have pushed more. But I did like 5-6 sessions that day too. You know,
yeah, but you're used to it, my guy. Like, I don't even own a car right now, so like, I'm starting from ground zero.
Yeah, that's why I'm just like, oh, all right, another session. Look, I drove all the way up here to drive. I'm gonna drive.
I mean, I hear you.
I'm gonna get these laps.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and then like obviously G hasn't been, but just like any other track, you see how the track progresses throughout the day, and then well, this time of year regresses, which you
correct
with
the temperatures
too. You know, but yeah, like this is real racing, and this is the ground floor. Of course, there's like slower performance karts you can have, but you know, in terms of like the fast stuff, this is the first frontier. This is the first foray into you know, what's to come.
So what I would say is we all have this to look forward to, and that's next year when my boy Steve got the new kart scenario going on. Gartrell's making it up, Seb's making it up, you know, I'm making it up. It would be crazy if we all made it up on the same day and got to hit back-to-back sessions. That would be wild. I might be asking for too much, but it could be possible. But nonetheless, everybody definitely has to drive, because we're gonna revisit this style of episode, but after we've all actually gotten to see what's up with a 30 horsepower racing kart.
Oh yeah, there we have it, guys. That's another episode right there. Of course, stay tuned for more. We already have the next 2 episodes for the next 2 months planned out. You know, of course, like Chris said, at some point, I'll get these guys to drive it, even though you and Mary might have to just rent a kart from OVRPs. I don't think you'll reach the pedals, or at least be able to fully extend it.
I'm dead.
But
at least let me try first, sir, before you try to put me on blast. I'm gonna be hitting that piece with my pinky toe. Don't matter.
Yeah, so we'll do that, and then next year, you know, we'll revisit the topic when everybody else also gets to drive a kart, or at least a similar.
You know what? Matter of fact, I'll wear some Timbs. I got you. We're gonna make up for the difference, bro. It's all good.
That might do it. That might do it. You know, hopefully it's not summertime.
Yeah, for real, because I'm gonna be looking real funny.
Oh yeah.
You'll be wearing shorts and Tim's on.
Yeah. It's an NYC love story.
I was just about to say that. Oh my God.
Yo, great minds think alike, kid.
Yeah, but there we have it. Appreciate the support. Comment below what you guys want to see. And yeah, we'll talk to you guys soon.